We love Classical Conversations.
Your organization is known worldwide, and we certainly appreciate every facet that you do.
I do believe in what you're doing because I've seen it in my family.
I'm so excited about all the things that, Robert, you guys do with Classical Conversations. It's been a huge blessing for our family.
Grateful for the work at Classical Conversations. You're a leader and you have been in this movement for a long time.
I do feel like I have a debt of gratitude to you, your family, all of CC for just the fruit that has come from CC.
Appreciate all that you guys do, both through this wonderful podcast and also through Classical Conversations, which I am convinced is the best education resource out there. Thank you very much for all that you do for the cause of Christ and for our families and for our children. Really, really appreciate it.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Refining Rhetoric. And today we're going to be talking about ethics and AI with Dr. William Davis from Covenant College. We've had him on before, and he talks about, he works on medical ethics. He writes about the biblical decision-making at the end of life. Departing in Peace is his most recent book. He's written all sorts of things on ethics, Lord of the Rings and philosophy, beginning of life, end of life. And now, like everyone else in education, he is dealing with AI. And, there's a lot of cool things that these typically large language learning models can do. What's the ethics behind all that? And so we'll explore that today. Maybe we'll figure out some things that we can do as educators, and what's the proper use of these type of tools and what's the improper use. So Dr. Davis, thank you so much for coming back to the show.
Great to be here.
Now, for those who might not be familiar, we've heard of probably ChatGPT. We actually have Claude that we have corporate instance here at Classical Conversations. We're just playing with it, trying to figure out what this technology can do, trying to have conversations about what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do, what's the ethical thing to do. Tell us a little bit about what is AI to begin with, and how it is taught, so that our listeners can know what we're talking about.
So I am not a computer science teacher, and I don't play one on TV, but because the professor world has been just convulsed with, so either people decide that they're just going to treat it like a tool, and they imagine that the future of all workspaces is going to be a future where there will be this tool. And so here's the happiest way to think about it, is just as you probably got comfortable with having a spell checker on board constantly, so that when you misspelled a word, you got a red squiggly on the bottom.
Yep.
You got comfortable with that. Well, surely you would get comfortable with having an AI assistant that was over in a side panel that would say things like, would you like to make that a little easier for the reader to understand? And it would highlight a section of the text, and you'd say, sure. And it would rewrite it for you. You might say, I would like it always at a 9th grade reading level. And then it would just know every time you transgress that by having too much of the passive voice, or your sentences were too long, or there were too many subordinate clauses, that it would prompt you to say, would you like to simplify that? Well, that would be, okay, that's kind of like a spell checker. But then you would also be able to highlight a whole paragraph and say, propose a way to word that makes 2 or 3 allusions to classical literature.
Yes.
And then it would expand it. You'd have a paragraph that was this long, and now it's this long, and it quotes from the Iliad, and then maybe a little Ovid for color. And wait a minute, is that like a spell checker, or is that now plagiarism? Well, so the old definition of plagiarism is that you copied someone else's work and took credit for it. You took credit for someone else's ideas as if they were your own. But so the way the AI would work is it's trained on enormous data sets. And here's maybe the simplest way to explain it. So, think about your church. So my church has about 400 people in the worship service. And imagine that the training data set was just going to be everything that anybody in that church had sent as an email ever. So we would just vacuum all of that up and then analyze it and look for patterns. So that if they said the word Genesis 1 : you would know that there was supposed to be another number after that, so it would guess that the next thing was a number.
Right.
And that's once it gets started, it takes the prompt and it generates a most likely starting set of words, and then it just, in light of all the emails ever sent by somebody in this church, what's the next most likely word? So if you'd had the same pastor for 30 years and it was Pastor Frank, as I have a Pastor Frank, then if the word pastor, the next most likely word would be Frank, unless there were context clues. So it's utterly dependent on the data set that it's using. And it's always the case now that the data set is a trade secret. You can't find out where they got everything. So the very best ones, like Claude is very good. And so what does good mean in this world?
Right.
Claude doesn't know anything. Claude only knows the statistically next most likely set of words in light of the enormous set of things. Now, one of the reasons Claude's so good is they took Claude, I'm pretty sure, includes all the public domain classical literature ever.
Right.
So anything that they could get for free, which includes like all of the works of Aristotle and all of the works of Thomas Aquinas, those are all available for free. So they're all in there. And so Claude is going to sound like somebody who has a pretty significant acquaintance with classical texts.
Yes.
Okay, so you're 16 years old and you were asked to write an essay on what did it mean to be pious in the 13th century in Europe. Okay, so the old way to do this, well, you and I both remember doing this as 16-year-olds. So you had to figure out, so you had to go to the library for me, I'm old enough, I'd go through the card catalog.
Yeah.
I would try to think of search terms, and then I would go look at text, and I'd have to find the place in Bonaventure or in Thomas Aquinas that talked about piety. Maybe I'd read some Francis of Assisi or something, try to figure out what's common among all of these 13th century texts about piety. That's what you and I did. It meant I had to go read the original text. If I'm 16 now, I put the prompt into Claude, and you've probably tried this. Like it's really this simple. You say, in 1,200 words, quoting from original sources, explain what a pious person was in 1270 in Italy. And then less than a minute later, you'd have 1,200 words that sounded about like a college sophomore.
Yeah.
Correct English, and citing sources. Now, it probably won't cite page numbers because it probably doesn't have the canonical text in a way that would allow them to say, but they probably could say it's this book. So this would be the Prima Secunda of Thomas Aquinas. So this is the Summa, the Prima Secunda. It's probably somewhere around question 48 in the Prima Secunda, probably Article 3. And it might be right based on the enormous set. Well, now you're teaching them and you get this essay. It sounds really good. And it could have been produced. So you go to Claude because you're using Claude and you know that your student has Claude. So you put in the very same prompt and it's very different. It's in a different order. It highlights different things. And that's because one of the reasons these AIs sound so, and they're so useful for business purposes, is they build in something called temperature, which is and the more of that there is, the higher the temperature, the more randomness they put in, so that it doesn't always give the same answer. And if the temperature is turned up high enough, it'll be a really different answer. It'll draw on different sources. It'll highlight different features. And
Yep.
so there is no way for the teacher to determine one way or the other whether Claude wrote this essay or the student went and read the text. So from a teacher standpoint, and I would imagine from many people who depend on these conversations, like, is there an appropriate use for a tool like that? Because in some ways it's like, suppose you're teaching 13th century spirituality, and you're the teacher and you haven't read a lot of Bonaventure. You haven't read any of the Latin Averroists to find out what they're up to or what the Benedictine schools were doing in the 13th century. But you've got a secondary text by a professor at the University of Notre Dame who's an expert on medieval studies, who's written an account, a whole chapter, 20 pages on 13th century spirituality. Well, you could read that and you would probably end up learning most of the things that Claude would tell you.
Right.
So I don't have any problem with the teacher asking the 16-year-old, read these 20 pages by the university professor who's an expert on medieval literature. That's not cheating, especially if you cite it, put a footnote about it. That's a tool that did a lot of digesting. Ideally, the good student would say, oh, there's multiple references here to the soul's journey back to God by Bonaventure. And then the student went and looked at the primary text. Ideally, the student went and looked at the primary text. But they could also do that if Claude said, oh, by the way, you need to, it's going to make multiple references to this text by Bonaventure.
Yeah.
So do we think of Claude as a tool like another published book by an expert? Claude doesn't know anything. Claude just knows the most likely next string of words with a certain amount of randomness added. And Claude's data set is fantastic for this kind of thing. Just like the data set for an AI that was reading radiology imaging, x-rays, reading x-rays, its data set is a whole bunch of images that have been commented on by experts in radiology. So the next most likely set of words about an x-ray are going to be really good for that AI. So from an educator standpoint, if I could trust, okay, that really is the key. If I could trust the students to use it only as a tool and not let it do the thinking for them, if all it was going to do, like the book about medieval spirituality, it tells them places they should go to encounter the primary text and think about it on their own. If I knew they would use it that way, I'm still worried about it. There's something about encountering.
It's not live, right? It's
no,
it's created by people, but it's almost it's difficult because you have to have some sort of expertise really to be able to use AI well, and
that's right, and that is the key. How do we get to the place where our students have the expertise to tell the difference between soulless dreck and something that is human, something that is original human, as opposed to, this is the first time this string of words has been put together because of the randomness feature that's been added, right? So, but it's not human. It's a statistically likely human-like thing.
But then, like, how much prompting, right? So,
yeah,
like, at what point is it that could be created? Because I think, like, if I say I have to write a 500-word essay on, any sort of subject, right? I could write into Claude. I could write, "Hey, Claude, write a 500-word essay about subject X," and it split out something that's, you said, like a sophomore level paper. I may know enough to know that it's right or wrong, or I might just turn it in, right? That's
right.
That seems like that could be plagiarism, right? Well,
Oh.
what if I?
So we're counting that as plagiarism. We're counting that as if you turn in work that was generated by an AI, no matter how good it is, if
Yeah.
you turn it in. So there's a couple of things that they could do. Is they could say that footnote, like title of the work, footnote. This text was generated by by Claude. We want them to tell us which AI,
Yeah.
with this prompt on this date. And if they do that, we don't accuse them of cheating.
Okay.
But we will say, so what did you do? Once this spit this out, what did you do to make it yours?
Right.
And if they say, well, nothing, well, then you just get an F, but not for integrity reasons. Right. So the problem is not that you lied about something.
Right.
The problem is that you've shown me nothing about what you are capable of doing if the power goes out.
Yes. So what happens? So now I'm a student. I have this paper. I go read a couple materials. I create a keyword outline. It's and I upload that into Claude, and I say, Claude, use this keyword outline, and turn this keyword outline into a 500-word essay. And I get it back, and I look at it. I say, well, that's not what I think. I'm going to change. It gives me 4 paragraphs. I make changes in all 4 paragraphs. I upload it back into Claude, and I say, hey, Claude, analyze this for persuasion, because this is a persuasive essay.
You have been playing with Claude.
I have been. Paragraph 3 is not very persuasive.
Right.
Okay, Claude, what changes would you suggest? And it gives you a list of new suggestions, and you take some, you leave some out. You go back and edit the paper, and now you turn it in. And I've provided a keyword outline. I've probably, changed at least, a third of the words in a third of the document. And I've ran it through, 3 or 4 iterations of Claude getting information back.
Right.
And I still need a footnote. And I put a footnote in that Claude provided feedback to my essay.
Yeah.
So now what?
So, so you're getting very close to what many colleges are hoping students will do.
Okay.
And they're probably just descriptively correct about this. This is what your boss will expect you to do in the future. If you think that college is about, or the education that the people in classical conversations are doing, if they think that the purpose of the education is to prepare them for a job, you probably count that as a successful assignment. However, I've been doing this long enough that the difference between your background knowledge that took the advice about persuasion, it's just like getting advice from a fellow student. You show the essay to a fellow student who says, I think paragraph 3 isn't very persuasive. And you ask the fellow student, well, so what could I add that would make it persuasive? And your friend says, well, you really want to highlight this thing. There's this fact you left out, which Claude might do. Mm-hmm. In that case, current rules about plagiarism do not require you to footnote your friend.
Right.
You went and talked to your friend. But a lot's going to matter. So a lot is going to depend on, one, how good was your friend at persuasive argument writing, which is then going to be about whether your friend was in a classical conversation program.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's going to depend upon their background, what they've read, who formed them. And the AI is never better than the training set. So another way to imagine what's going on when you ask an AI for, is this persuasive or not? Let's take your church on Sunday morning, and suppose instead of asking one person to look at it, suppose you put your essay, your 500-word essay, up on the big screen at your church, and told all 400 people, read this and then type in what you think of it for persuasiveness. And everybody in your church typed it in. And there was a program that took the average of what everybody in your church thought of the persuasiveness of the argument. That's really what the AI is doing. So it's like getting a very large, that's why it's a large language model. It's going to take a huge set of sentences. They're not opinions. They're just sentences. But it would be like that. You had a whole bunch of sentences from people in your church. And then it would matter whether your church was composed of all lawyers,
Right,
or all football players, right? So the quality of the feedback that you're going to get.
That's even something that Claude can do, right? If I'm at your college, I might say, write this that'd be persuasive to a Presbyterian, or I can write this to make it persuasive to a Catholic, or
you can,
and it will try to pull in information that it has, right?
So so you're highlighting one of the powers of Claude, but you're also making it pretty easy to see one of the ways that Claude is never going to be a replacement for our students being able to generate these arguments without leaning on an AI. And that is, you and I are both playing with Claude, but we're playing with Claude with our whole background. Like, I've got multiple degrees. I went to school until I was 33 years old and have continued to be mostly an academic who mostly reads all the time. So when I look at something that Claude produces and when it makes a recommendation, I'll say, no, that would not improve it. Whereas somebody who didn't have our background would just be defenseless. As soon as Claude said, this is an improvement, then they're just going to have to go with it. And the only way you learn to tell the difference between a more persuasive paragraph than not, especially for a given audience, especially for a Presbyterian audience as opposed to a Baptist audience, is to write them yourself and then go talk to a Presbyterian about this argument. And then they say, I kind of got stuck right there. Claude's taking the average from its training set. That training set on average knows less about the way Presbyterians think than I do.
Right.
It knows more than I do about how Baptists think. Because I don't have a lot of practice. I have some. I married a woman who grew up in a Baptist church, so I know some. But the farther you get from your own experience, the less you're going to be able to give a thoughtful critique or detect a real mistake in it. Mm-hmm. So I think our students, like your students and my college students, I think all of those people need to learn how to do it entirely on their own.
Yes.
So that they will be the generation who can tell whether this new AI is an improvement over this old one. Because if you haven't done it yourself, if you haven't read the text yourself, you're just going to be at the mercy of what the AI says is a clear sentence, says is a persuasive argument. I'm hoping to inspire my students to do. It's going to look like a ton of foolish work. Especially the more the business world says, we are not interested in people who can write original business proposals. Right. We're interested in people who know how to use the proprietary Claude business proposal writing software that is only trained on the very best business proposals ever. We're looking for people who know how to use that thing. And so we're going to hire a few people and then pay a lot for the proprietary Claude AI. And we don't need you to know how to write a business proposal. We don't need you to know how business works. We just need you to know how to make the AI do its work, which will be fine until we run out of energy and nobody can use Claude ever. Actually, it won't be fine. It'll be soulless and merely commercial. I mean, I realize commercial's part of human life, but it won't be. it won't be human in the fullest sense. It'll be human-ish
Yeah.
or human enough to fool somebody who you want to buy something, but not to inspire someone that you would like to take beyond their meager understanding of what they might accomplish. I don't know. I think you probably could get Claude to write some pretty inspiring poetry.
Hey everyone, producer Chris here. Today we've got something special for the dads who are trying to lead their families with purpose and faith. We've partnered with Dad Tired to give away 2 free tickets to an upcoming retreat. This is a weekend designed to equip, refresh, and strengthen Christian fathers who are trying their best to walk in their Christian faith and live out their calling. Whether you're a longtime listener or you've just discovered the show, don't wait. This is your chance to invest in your personal relationship with Christ, to invest in your leadership skills with your family, and also strengthen bonds with other men who are trying to do the same. Here's how to enter. Head to the Refining Rhetoric Instagram and follow the pinned post about the Dad Tired Retreat giveaway. Follow the instructions in the caption and don't wait, because we'll be doing the drawing on July 25th. We'd love to see you there on us. Thanks for listening to Refining Rhetoric.
Yeah, I haven't tried that yet. But yeah, so one of the things we actually had a meeting, not in CC, but the group I was with had Microsoft come in and talk about how they were training there, and basically they were training them in the help desk situation is what they were kind of using the AI to see how it was. And they said if you had an expert that was an expert help desk, person who had been doing it for 5 years or more, it could quadruple his productivity. If he had someone who'd been doing it for, 2 to 5 years and was competent, it would increase his productivity by 25%. But if it was someone who had been in the spot for less than a year, it actually decreased the productivity because they were not able to see when the AI was giving them bad information. And they would actually go through, this, okay, my computer won't do X. So they would go and try to look at the AI's, recommendation and go through it. And they would, get stuck, or they would even say that it did answer it correctly. And so they'd give it like a thumbs up. And so the AI was when it was being taught by these, junior people, was coming up with incorrect answers in their language learning model. And so, if someone, and these are, highly intelligent people, obviously hired to work at Microsoft's help desk, right? They're no slouches, but they would just, start mindlessly following what it's telling them to do. And so, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the future. And one of the interesting things that you work in is medical ethics. So
right.
I don't know that we're going to come to an answer on what high school mom should be doing with AI at this point, other than to be aware of it and maybe to play with it yourself.
So I do think it's a little scary. I don't know if you remember the first time you started asking Claude to do things for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like before I missed the opportunity, what you described about Microsoft's estimation of how much background and experience you have to have for the AI to be a productivity enhancement, that's really helpful. That's the sort of thing that I'm pretty sure even a college student would understand, that Microsoft has empirical reasons for believing that if you don't already have expertise and experience, the AI is not going to make you more productive. Because all they hear is, this will do it for you, and it'll do it better than you would have done it. So that's really helpful. Thank you. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
So if you remember, I remember the first time I started putting questions into, I just started on ChatGPT 3.5, that very first one. And so I thought I could trip it up by saying something like, give a biblical explanation of what the gospel is and cite Bible passages, because I thought it would choke on that. Yeah. And the answer was like spooky good. It quoted Romans 3, and it quoted from Romans 8, and a little bit of Ephesians 2 thrown in there. So by faith you have been saved, and not by works, and not that of yourself. Like, good grief. But it doesn't know anything.
Yeah. You asked
just
if it wanted to be saved.
right. Right. So then I asked if it had prayed the prayer. No. But so I was unnerved by the quality of the answers that I was getting. Especially, I went from that to, okay, let me just put my test questions into it and say, so this morning I gave a test in my History of Ideas class, and one of the questions was explain why Descartes thought it was necessary to assume that he was being deceived by an omnipotent demon. Explain what that seemed necessary to him and what solution he found to that threat. So I put the question into ChatGPT 4 that I'm using now. I said, you got 500 words to answer this question. The answer was okay. But it was way better than I expected.
Yeah.
It made references to the epistemological crisis of the early 17th century, which I was sort of hoping the students would say something about. Like one time through, because I give the same prompt like 4 or 5 times just to see if there's this kind of center of gravity that might show up on a student answer. And just, I don't worry about it now because I only have them take tests on paper with pens.
Yeah.
Like no devices anywhere near them. Like you need to show me that you can do this on paper with a pen. So I'm not worried about it very much anymore, but AI is the reason that I'm no longer letting them type essay answers because I don't think they've been cheating, but I think one of my obligations as a teacher is to lower the temptations where I can.
Right.
Even though it means more work to try to read their handwriting. I think that's what I owe my students is to make the temptations smaller. And if I make, and verbal. So I 4 or 5 times, they got like 4 or 5 times through, it didn't get everything that I talk about in class, but it probably got 50% of what I talk about in class as the historical context for Descartes' meditations. It's like, good grief. So it's unnerving. So if you're a high school teacher listening to this discussion, I do think it's now a best practice to go play with Claude or ChatGPT 4, which you can do for free. Just play with it, see what it's able to do. And then what I've found to be most effective with my students is to give them a relatively simple reading assignment where they write an essay. So they read the assignment and they come into class and I say, so right now I want you to write an answer, like just a 300-word answer to this question based on the reading. Something about something about the central argument and something about what a Christian should think about this. So they write it up by hand. So once right after they've done it, on the screen I put up ChatGPT 4. And I put the prompt in there, and I say, in 300 words, do this. And then they watch it generate an answer. And I say, so, how many of you, and then I have them, okay, how many of you think that that's better than the answer you wrote? Mm-hmm. If you did, put a star on it. Now, hand it to your neighbor. Everybody read your neighbor's answer. Is your neighbor's answer better than the AI's answer? Mm-hmm. So, and this is really odd because less than 25% of students think the answer they wrote is better than the AI, and nearly all of their classmates think that the human answer was better than the AI. And it's something about we are slow to believe that we can do better than a computer. So this has been a good exercise. And the students say, oh, I didn't value this feature. And so I say, so what was it about the answer, your classmate's answer, that you found better? And they're able to point to, this is insightful. There's life behind this right here, the way you went about this. And so we're slow to believe that we can do better than a computer, especially an intelligence that doesn't know anything. We're slow to believe that. And I think that's just increasingly true about our relationship with computing machines, is we assume they know more than we do, and they don't. But we assume they can do nearly everything better than we do, like write. So to have a classmate say, no, I thought your answer was better than the AI. And that is something that Classical Conversations classrooms can do together, just to see both what the tool can do and then how you can help students appreciate the gap between what the machine will do for them, but what they can do that the machine can't. I don't know if that would be helpful.
Interrupting this podcast to tell you why where you bank matters. America's Christian Credit Union is proud to partner with Classical Conversations to provide a full suite of banking services to CC communities across the country. America's Christian Credit Union is a cooperative of believers pulling resources together to support a biblical worldview and the greater body of Christ. Where you put your money matters. Whether you're a licensed CC director looking for a better business banking or a family seeking a financial partner that shares your values, ACCU is here to serve. We'd like to invite you to join the many benefits of membership. Learn more about America's Christian Credit Union by visiting our episode show notes below. Now, let's get back to the episode.
No, that's great. I love that idea because we're trying to figure out, it's obviously going to be there. It's going to be part of our lives, whether we like it or not. So how to use it appropriately. And, one of the things that we do at Classical Conversation is obviously a lot of conversation and rhetorical skills, which you can't really fake with AI. And then we do Blue Book exams, which is handwritten, like you said. And so that's a little bit, I'm sure someone will figure out some way, but makes it a lot more difficult. Make sure there's no
It's
phone
just a
nearby
lot more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the conversation part, so I haven't seen this done yet, but I know people who have seen it and are working on it. And that is for them to put together, to digitally sample Robert, like take all of the podcasts that you've done and put them into a large language model and generate an AI that would talk to me. It would look like you. It would sound like you. I would think I was talking to you, but what it was the average of you given the immediately preceding prompts with a certain amount of randomness. Right. So maybe I'm not talking to you right now at all. Right now, I'm talking to.
That's save me a lot of time. If I could just digitally AI myself into all of these podcasts.
Right. So the ones that I've seen of this, that you can still tell. At least I think I can still tell that there's little glitches. There's things about the shadings, about the shape of the mouth, and it's trying to keep up.
For now.
But that's just it for now. And so what are we going to do with the tool? What is Classical Conversation going to do with the tool where we've digitally sampled Aristotle's face? And you can talk to Aristotle about Aristotle's works and have a conversation about whether his politics goes about things in a sensible way. And you're talking to him. Would that be a learning tool or would that be bad?
Who knows? I don't know. Someone, because we've been starting to talk a little bit about AI over the last year, and someone got it in their brain that Classical Conversations was going to create Lee Borton's AI, and she was going to homeschool everyone in the world, which, but look, you're going to have these robots that have unlimited energy, right? They don't get tired, and you're going to have, it's going to be the Jetsons. You're going to have your kid at home. You're going to have this safe robot who's going to he'll throw baseballs with them for an hour and play hoops with them for an hour and play Pokemon cards with them for an hour and never get tired.
No.
And the parents can, there's a very,
I think we'll have a lot of failure to thrive problems. So
Yes.
that was one of the challenges that we at Covenant College went through. So the pandemic hit, we were only remote for classes for 6 weeks. And then we just said, no, we're going to be 6 feet apart in masks because human contact is what education's all about. But we did discover that there are a handful of things that could be done effectively. Like you could have faculty meetings that were just over, because we all knew each other well enough that just seeing two-dimensional was enough for us to do faculty meetings for 1 year.
Right.
But we never got comfortable thinking that we knew enough about our relationship with a student to know that we were connecting if we weren't in the same room. And so we've doubled down hard on, we are in-person, life-on-life transformation, not transaction. And we were starting to wonder whether there were, digital ways to maybe maximize the number of people that we touched. And what we learned from COVID was no. We are going to be embodied and in each other's way. It's just, and I think what I know about classical conversation is it's made the same sort of determination. There is no way to replace a face-to-face conversation for refining the skills that we're going to need.
Yeah, with somebody who loves you and wants to see you succeed.
Right. And is also willing to tell you, that's not very good.
Yeah.
I love you, but that was lousy.
Yeah. Well, so this is going to be used everywhere. We know our medical system costs a whole ton of money, and there's so much different expenses in there. And doctors are human and miss things, and they don't have, a doctor in New York might have figured something out that a doctor in LA hasn't heard about yet. So yeah, talk about how you're seeing AI potentially play out in the medical field. What are those things that they're wrestling with? What are some benefits and what are some scary things that could really go sideways on us?
So the first thing that my medical friends would want me to say, even though it makes me nervous, is it has now been demonstrated that the error rate for an AI scribe, somebody, an assistant who sits in the room, takes notes on a conversation between a physician and a patient, the error rate for the AI is lower than for a human scribe. So we wouldn't hire human scribes. We would have a recording device, and it would do a better job of accurately capturing what was said, and can do a better job of analyzing based on, if it depends on how it's trained, but within the kind of training that they're now getting, that's going to be highly efficient. So it's going to save money. But it's not another person in the room. But here's the first ethical challenge. What does informed consent mean for an AI to be analyzing the conversation? How much? So I'm a doctor, you come into my office and I say, so there's a recording device over here that's going to make sure I don't miss anything. Is that all right if we have it on? And you say, well, sure. Well, I didn't say it's going to propose a diagnosis.
Yeah.
It's going to contact the pharmacy with your prescription unless I tell it not to. I didn't explain any of that. I just said it's going to record. Well, have you given informed consent to that conversation being turned into an electronic record of everything we talked about? So people are trying to work that out. They're also trying to work out what would be a morally adequate data set for a population. Because if you just take the people who are willing to give up their data, it's not going to reflect the demographic diversity of, nearly any population. So Are we going to require people to give up their data in order to get medical care so that the data set that we're training it on is as good as possible? Wait a minute. That sounds like coercion. So there's some real questions. And I'm a volunteer ethics consultant for one of the larger hospitals here in Chattanooga. And they're part of a 200 hospital Roman Catholic network. And before they're going to put those kinds of AI systems, the ones that record patient encounters with patients, before they put them in, they've got 5 different teams working on the ethical questions that need to be sorted out about informed consent, about privacy of data, about the quality, the demographic quality of the data sets that are being used. And then what are we going to require of physicians and nurses? How long do they have to spend reading the AI's proposed summary before they can hit approve?
Or do they have to approve it all?
Well, no, like,
I mean,
like at least
now they do.
Yeah, for this hospital system, nobody wonders whether they have to hit approve. But you're right. That's going to become a problem because the AI systems are going to become so trusted. Whether that will mean they're trustworthy is another question. But they'll become so trusted that it'll look like a waste of time for an MD to spend 15 minutes reading the complete summary and analysis rather than spending 15 minutes with a different patient.
I mean, if you think about it, like we have, digital over the phone consultations now, right? Like I have kids. I can call a number and I can be like, okay, Trey's been sick for 2 days. He has 101 fever. He's been throwing up, this and that, and they can, prescribe stuff or tell you what to do. Soon you won't even need you could foresee, you have some sort of device on your phone that, that looks into it, and now you're suddenly a button.
My employer, just one of the benefits that we have is something called text care, where if I had a sore throat and laryngitis, and so I texted my symptoms to the text care number. And the answer was, take a picture of the back of your throat, click on this link for a YouTube video showing you how to take a picture of the back of your throat. I followed the instructions, and then I got an answer, and then they've sent a prescription to my pharmacy. And the whole thing was over text. I didn't hear anybody. That could all have been done by a bot.
Yeah.
It could. I hope it wasn't. And nobody told me that it was, but it could have been done, and probably done pretty well for sore throat and a scratchy voice.
Yeah.
It's just that, and it might have caught a cancer in my throat that a low-level human wouldn't have caught, because if it compared to the image to all throats, including cancerous throats, it might have said, "Ooh, there's a shadow where there shouldn't be one," and it might have been even better than a human looking at the image. I still want humans. Is that because I'm old? I sincerely don't know the answer to that.
Well, and it's you need experts, I think, is what we're going to find out, is you need experts to be able to double check. And
Yes.
it'll have to be an algorithm. Okay, take 2 Tylenol. All right, I probably don't need a doctor to double check that taking 2 Tylenol. Worst case scenario, you're not, as long as you're not allergic, there's not really a downside for you taking it, right? Versus, hey, go get cancer, go get this cancer treatment cut out of your arm. Well, you definitely want a human doctor to go double check that I, in fact, do have skin cancer. But I mean, you can hear people, like, if you got celebrities or like newscasters, it's like once or twice a year, somebody's like has somebody who's watched them or listened to them over a long period of time goes, something's wrong with them. I think they have cancer. They call them up, and bada boom, bada bang, this lay person who's seen this change identifies an issue.
Right. And that's a really good example. That's essentially crowdsourcing a diagnosis. There's 400,000 people watching that newscaster. It only takes one of them to say, that looks like my friend when they had this cancer. They're recognizing a pattern. That's what the AI does. It crowdsources pattern recognition. And but there needs to be people. You don't say, now go cut off your face. You say, now you need to talk to a human who has expertise in exactly how to go about dealing with this pathology, right? Please? Not just, go down to the Walgreens where there are no people. There's just facial recognition stuff that then a bottle of pills pops out. No, I don't want that. I would like a person. So we don't have time for it now, but maybe on our next conversation, there's a piece of this that you can be pondering. If you went to the Walgreens and it told you, take these pills, and you took the pills and it hurt you, who's responsible? Is it the person who programmed the AI? So it hasn't been litigated. Nobody knows right now. Nobody knows who you'd file malpractice against if every step in the thing, in the whole process, was a bot. Because the programmers will stop programming if they're going to be responsible for every error out of a system that includes a random element. So we don't know. We don't know who's going to be held responsible. And when there's a human who has to say approve, we know who is responsible. It's the human who hit approve. But if you take that person out, we don't know who's responsible.
Interesting. Well, Dr. Davis, thank you so much. These are wonderful things to ponder. If you want to ponder things like this, or you want your kids to ponder things like this, send them to Covenant College, or go pick up one of his books. And thank God, people like you are out there having these deep conversations, so the rest of us can figure out how to get our kids dressed and dinner on the table. So,
all right, it's a lot of fun. Thanks.
Until next time, everyone, tune in to the Refining Rhetoric podcast for more exciting episodes like today's. Share this one with a friend and go educate yourself on play with some of these AI tools, but just be careful when you do.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.